This is episode 172 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Welcome to episode 172 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have on the show Alfonso Salemi. He is the founder or co-founder, actually forget if he is co-founder of Jag Properties. And that's a rent-to-own company. And Alfonso has been in this business for nearly 10 years now. And rent-to-own is a concept that made a lot of sense to me early on in investing. And we dug into the weeds of that. Again, we really have not talked about this topic since the last time he was on the show, more than probably 2.5 years ago at this point. So it was good to catch up with Alfonso, talk to him about what he's doing in rent-to-own investing, his entrepreneurial spirit, of course, and all the things you might want to know about rent-to-own. And then we also got into his personal real estate investing portfolio, talked a little bit about how he's been able to grow in Hamilton over the last couple of years, despite the property values, what he's looking for in an investment, and what works in his investing strategy. So it was very nice to catch up with him, and I'm sure you're going to get some value out of this episode. So before we get into it, I just want to remind you that it's extremely helpful to this podcast and the algorithms out there if you leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast or whatever podcast platform you listen on. And if you're watching on YouTube, if you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell, and if you wouldn't mind leaving a comment, these things all just help get this podcast out to more people and help it grow. If I've added value to you, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could help out in that way. And if you are looking for a little bit more help analyzing deals, my cash flow analyzer spreadsheet is available on my website at andrew-hines.com. And of course, if you're new to real estate investing and some of these concepts are foreign to you, I'd highly recommend you go right back to episode 1 and work your way through, as so many other investors have done. And because there are just so many gold nuggets that have been dropped, I assure you that you'll find it extremely helpful. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into episode 172 and with Alfonso Salemi. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have on the podcast for the second time Alfonso Salemi. It's been a while. Alfonso, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for having me, Andrew. Great to be back on here again. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, what, 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that?
Well, at least, yeah. COVID's been at least 2. So last time we were doing this, we were in person. So I'm saying at least 2 years, if not 3 now, for sure.
Yeah. Well, the podcast's been running for 3 and is it 3.5 now, or is it like 3.25? That's wild to me. But anyways, so I'm sure things have changed. I know that you're a new father, as am I. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, it's that's probably the biggest change. Yeah, congratulations to you too. I know. Both are little guys. I thought I had no spare time before, so now it's even less. So it's been fun. It's been a wild ride, but it's a great, definitely being from a new parent standpoint and trying to organize and keep everything in order.
I have a whole new respect for mothers and fathers, especially ones who have done it like 3 times. I'm like, I don't understand how you've done that. It's nothing I've done is hard by comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. So, you're known to be the rent-to-own guy. I'd say that's you'd probably agree with that. Of course, the Right Club, and you've got your podcast there as well. Tell me what else is going on in your world, and of course a recap for those who haven't seen the previous episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, first and foremost, with Jag Properties and the rent-to-own program, we've been continually growing that business. Obviously, the personal portfolio has been growing a little bit as well too, with some other buy and holds and some longer term rentals. Obviously the Right Club and recording the podcast, that's been lots of fun. And like, as we just mentioned, becoming a new father, that's taken priority definitely over most things. Obviously the business is continuing to grow. We're helping more and more people get into home ownership, and we've built a pretty big team now as well too. We have 8 full-time staff that are helping more clients and getting them through the rental program, and really systematizing this and continuing to grow so that we can help more people.
Yeah, let's recap the concept of rent to owning, because this is something that I was, initially very keen on. I read Mark Loeffler's book way back in the day, and that was one of the first real estate books I think I ever read. And it was just like, okay, this is the way to go. Don't deal with broken toilets. You just, let's just get rent to own tenants, and they'll take care of their own broken toilets. So that was kind of my intro to it. And the idea is, of course, that an investor would buy a house with a tenant that had a goal of owning that house. So it's like the tenant picks the house. They say, I want that one. You as the investor buy it and then rent it to them, with a portion of their rent being a deposit going towards their eventual purchase on it. I know obviously that's overly simplified. Why would somebody want to do that? My take is because you're making more cash flow, higher rent payments, because their deposit portion is in there, you get more cash flow on a monthly. And then of course there's a built-in return with an end value. Did I miss anything?
No, you know what? You covered it really well. It's absolutely. Just the security, like you mentioned, of the person that's in your property, the security, helping a family, helping an individual become a homeowner. I just read a global news article. I think it's over 63% of people don't think that they can own their home anymore. It's gotten out of reach, or it's impossible to do that. So I love being able to offer this opportunity to help more people to get into home ownership.
Okay, and I have many follow-up questions about what's changed, with the market and the way things have gone and how that's affected things. So we've kind of recapped the concept. Of course, from a tenant's perspective, the most common thing would be bruised credit, people with credit that won't quite work with the bank, but otherwise they'd be a good applicant if the credit portion was there. They have the income, the story makes sense. It's just a matter of maybe they had an incident with the family or what have you. Is that sort of a good take on that, or is there more to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Credit's definitely, in the top three. It's always interchanging depending on the situation of the client, but credit, income, and down payment, those are, the magic trifecta for any financing. And it's no different for our tenant buyers and our clients that want to get into home ownership. So you mentioned credit, that they've had bruised credit, or, they've had to extend lines because of, just life circumstances, right? Illnesses, deaths, divorce, separation, those types of things where they've had to go into debt. But income and down payment amounts, definitely on the increase in purchase prices, we've seen down payments being an issue as well too, because as purchase prices go up, the percent of down payment is going up with it.
Now, would you say that, so you said business has grown. So reasonably since the first lockdown, business has grown. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, we've seen more and more people that want to get into it. Yeah.
More and more. Okay. So the interesting thing to me is, like, where are they getting the money to afford this? Because now, 2.5 years ago, the average price point in Canada was probably $200,000-$300,000 lower across the country. Yeah. So how are people making up for that difference? That's what I'm curious about. Are they getting more money from friends and family? Well, I guess they can't get it from friends, but from family members for kind of their down payment or deposit, or are there two people or two families going in on one house? Like, tell me the story. What's happening?
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail right on the head. The bank of mom and dad, have been stepping up, helping with deposits, people that need that down payment to get into home ownership. And as we've seen, like, there's been a shift in where people are working, right? Working from home, not having to commute. So those areas that people are buying are, a little bit further out from the core or the main areas. So, again, we've seen it increase just because, there's people that have gotten new jobs or new opportunities. It seems to be like the people that are liking their jobs are staying there longer. There's been a shift for people are more valuable. It's tough to find good help and good work. But I think that the biggest thing that we've seen is that obviously it's like front page news on every news station. It's part of the election campaign, part of now the politics of home ownership, and people are realizing that it's probably one of the biggest investments that they'll make in their life, that if they don't get onto this ship or they don't get on board now, they might not ever be. Like I said, I keep quoting that global news article, but people are thinking it's impossible. And I do think this is going to be the new way of buying a home, where it is tough to save, and you can't keep up with appreciating markets. So having that plan or that program where it takes 2, 3, 4 years to get into that home, it is beneficial. So we are seeing more people that need assistance come to our program.
It's interesting. This model actually almost makes more sense in the high inflationary environment we're in, because I don't know what you're building in as your appreciation, but back in the day, it used to be aggressive to do 5% because you couldn't know if the market would do that. But, lately the market's done like 20 to 30. So is that still the standard, sort of in that 5% ballpark, or has that gone up?
Yeah, no, we've continued to stick with that. And, again, it is for working it out for what the client can afford as well, too. We could use any appreciation. We could use what the market does and say 20 to 30%. But again, if we're not setting our client up for success, and reverse engineering that. But again, we're in that 4 to 6% appreciation, in that area, to making sure that, there is that consistent growth, right?
And who knows if that'll continue, right? I mean, obviously we can't predict the market. We could have a correction. And we think we're kind of in the midst of a minor correction right now, and who knows how far that goes down. But over the course of the next few years, will it come back? My feeling is most likely, but it also depends on what politicians will do. So it's but I mean, I think like if you consider our last 2 years, somebody who's thinking about getting into a rent to own, they're like, I could save for 3 years while property values go up 20 to 30% a year, or I could lock something in now at a 15% increase in 3 years time, which means I'll have a ton of built-in equity, plus I'll have a saved up deposit. Makes a ton of sense from the tenant standpoint. Now, from the investor standpoint, you're still getting great returns. Like what ballpark of returns are investors getting?
Yeah, typically our joint venture partners, they're enjoying, returns of somewhere, 16, 17 or more percent annual return on their investment, right? So the returns of, again, another reason why, rent to own from an investment standpoint is that return, more secure client. The returns are still there. And again, it's not about the timing of the market. You have something that is, I don't want to say guaranteed. Nothing in life is guaranteed. However, it is projected that you can,
Right.
You can pretty much bank on that or sleep comfortably at night, knowing that those returns are coming in, you're getting your payments on time, you're not having to re-tenant properties, that's security, and the return is still really good. Again, like that's, I think maybe one of the knocks that people talk about rent to own is you're leaving money on the table. And as we've seen over the last 2.5 years, that yes, 20, 25, 30% increase. But we know that's not a regular occurrence. That can't happen every year. If you're banking on 20% annual return, annual increase, you're not doing it right. Being conservative and having those, right? So, and there is a social component as well too for our investors, that we are helping other families get into home ownership as well too. Obviously, we're a business, we need to make money. Investors want a return on their investment. No one does this to lose money, but the social component of helping people to get into home ownership, that's something that you can't quantify either. That makes you feel good as well.
Okay. And would you mind giving me like a general idea of like who your typical investor would be? Like how, what's like the profile of your typical investor that joint ventures with you guys?
Yeah, it's just individuals, families that want a better return on their investment. They're working their full-time jobs. They don't want to, they're busy with families and their work. They don't want to manage, toilets, tenants, properties, all that kind of stuff, where it's pretty much hands-off investment. So we've had, young investors that are just new to investing that, want to just cut their teeth and learn a little bit more about, how to buy rental properties. We've had veteran investors that know that 16, 17, 18% is a great return on an annual basis, especially when there's very little or no management from the standpoint of the investor. Yeah. So the typical investor, and again, like I mentioned, that social component that they do want to help. There is there is a willingness to help that family. But it's all different types of investors that are hands off. Maybe are working their own portfolio and looking at maybe more active in their investments, but want a solid return without much effort.
Yeah, for a passive return, I mean, how much more can people expect? There are a few things that are obviously included in this, though. They got to be able to qualify for a mortgage, and then they would have to have the down payment. So that's basically that. Now, do they get the cash flow throughout, or you guys split the cash flow?
Yep, absolutely. Throughout the program, the investor is getting the cash flow throughout the program. Obviously, at the end of the sale, when we're selling back to the tenant buyer, we sell back the home to the tenant buyer. They're getting half of that, or the increase as well too. And there's that little bit of pay down throughout the 3 years as well too.
Right. Okay. So they get everything they invested back plus half of whatever the upside is that you guys have pre-calculated. So the deal's sort of pre-calculated. Now, the only way that doesn't come to fruition is if the market for some reason won't support the value you have at the end, or if the tenant buyer can't buy, if something happens.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And in some cases, we've had to extend programs from a third year to a fourth year because the tenant buyer needs a little bit more time to, whether it's clean up credit or claim income that they haven't claimed properly. For the down payment, that's part of what the client is saving up throughout the program. So that's always, that box is always going to be checked as long as they're making their payments on time, and that portion of that rent goes towards the down payment.
Okay. So from a tenant standpoint, I know I'm grilling you with questions now, but from a tenant standpoint, who will you take and who won't you take? Like, I mean, obviously you want to help, but there's some people who have shown delinquent behavior that it's just not going to be a good fit, right? It's not going to be a good fit to put your investors with them. Obviously bruised credit, like you said, people get divorced. They have, somebody gets sick in their family. There's an incident that happens that explains a blip in bad credit. Those are obviously, and that was my understanding, like kind of the best type of tenant for this. But, you mentioned income being an instance, a scenario where the bank might not like it because they can't prove 2 years of income, but these people might have really good income. Do you have that type of a scenario as well?
Absolutely. As we see, two categories that we're seeing a huge increase of applicants and people that we're working with are newcomers to the country, where they've come here for work or for opportunity. They have some down payment. They're new at their role or at their job, so they need that time to establish their credit. And young professionals as well too, that are coming out of school, that are looking to establish longer employment history.
Right.
And again, when it comes down to the income, it's always been my favorite. Is self-employed. Self-employed individuals that are small business owners, or they get to determine, or they get to choose, I should say, what they make. And if they're not claiming their true income, it gives them time to claim the correct amount, so that they can claim.
Right. Yeah. So you could take a less rigid approach and say, let's take a look at what you actually are earning and see if it makes sense. And so if you were to properly claim it all, what would it look like? That makes a lot of sense. Right. Do you ever take like people with who are applying to get residency, and maybe they have a current 9 SIN, like the temporary SIN number, but they're applying to get a proper one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Temporary, non-permanent residents that are coming here that are looking to get full-time residency, and that are looking to stay in the country and work in the country. That's been a growing part of the applicants that we've seen, is newcomers that are coming here for all different reasons, whether it's work, it's family, and then want to establish roots and build a home in Canada and in Ontario.
Cool. Is there anything I've missed? Because I've just been throwing out everything that was crossing my mind.
No, it's great. Yeah. With your background in rental specifically, and obviously your investing background, you understand it. But again, in the tougher market, like obviously we saw, the beginning of this year, there was such a low inventory amount, right? So we've been getting into multiple offer situations and being able to be still competitive and getting our clients homes. However, we've seen tenants that have really want to own their home, that have taken that time to go through the process, maybe hear no 4, 5, 6 times, and continue to go through that offer process. But again, I think it's just, like I said, this is going to be a new way, if not the new way, to get into home ownership from a primary residence standpoint, where the banks are going to have their criteria, the lenders are going to have their criteria, and not everybody fits into that criteria. So it's taking that time, locking in that purchase price, and educating, right, of what to do so that you can qualify, and we're there to assist them.
Yeah, so you must have a really well built out program to educate the tenant buyers how this all works, right? Because to them, it's not going to be intuitive. They're not going to totally get it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We brought our credit team in-house. We're checking up with our clients throughout the term at least 3 times per year. They have access to our team so that we can look at, first of all, their credit portfolio, make sure that they are saving the right amount, as well as claiming the income properly, putting those pieces together so that they are successful at the end. And that's a responsibility.
Yeah, that's super critical. Super critical, because as much as you'd like to think these people will just fix things, life gets busy, right? And things get out of control, and they don't necessarily follow up on it. So you guys following up on it, you probably have saved a lot of deals that wouldn't have gone through otherwise.
Yeah, I say this all the time. If they could have done it on their own, they would have done it already. And that's why we're there to help and to guide them and keep them accountable. That this is, essentially the carrot is that home, and that home ownership. Of following through with the program. So whether it is income, whether it is down payment, whether it is credit, they have the tools, they have the knowledge, they have us at their disposal, so that they can reach out and say, okay, this is the plan for the next 2, 3, 4 years, so that we can get them on the right track and get them into the right qualifying as well too. Because whether it's the bank lending or B lenders, is getting them that qualification. And as interest rates and qualification rules, as they change, increase, and become tougher, it's going to get harder to navigate those waters for buyers. And you walk into a bank, not to put down the banks, but they're not going to give you that assistance. They're going to check a couple boxes, and if it's no, then you're walking out of there maybe with a pen, maybe without. But you're not going to get the assistance that you need from the bank. And mortgage brokers is a great source of our tenant buyers. That they can't fit them into that criteria. They want to help them, but if they're not able to close that deal today, what effort or time do they have to spend with that client, over a period of time? And if they're not closing on that business today, so we're a good bridge for those professionals as well, so that they can get them into a deal right away.
Is that a big, like what percentage of your business would you say is referral from brokers?
Oh yeah. From brokers and realtors, I'd probably say like in the 40, 50% range, or half that business, because they have clients they know they're looking at, but they can't fit them. And the good mortgage brokers aren't going to put them into, deals that are high interest, or, putting them in a worse situation, or private money that it's not a long-term solution. Some cases we've had to help clients that are in that scenario, where they've had private lenders and they're paying 8, 9, 10%, and they have a year to fix whatever their issue is. And a year's not long enough to improve credit or save up the balance of the down payment. So those private lenders are taking that home back, and these clients are left in a situation that they're worse off when they started that scenario. And the rent to own program is setting them up so that they can get into conventional financing.
You know what's interesting? Like, I just love entrepreneurship, and maybe we've had this conversation before, but how long has the business been established so far?
It's going to be 8 years that we incorporated, and about a year and a half or so before that, we were kind of working on it.
Yeah. And were you working like full time and doing this on the side? And like, at what point did you say, okay, I'm full time on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like it was probably about a year. At the time where I was working, I was itching to kind of leave full time work, and I had the investing bug, and luckily at the time I was able to leave work, and my business partner was still working full time, and I was able to grow that business. I probably left work a little bit earlier than maybe I should have, but it kind of gave me the kick in the butt, the encouragement to go out there and hustle and find more business. But yeah, it's almost 8 years now that we've been incorporated, and 200 and some odd projects, 225 projects afterwards. It's been a blessing, really, in terms of, like you said, loving the entrepreneurship, the idea of solving problems.
Well, people, right? And somebody willing to go out there and say, I got an idea and I believe in it. I'm gonna just screw my job, like I'm going. That's something I've always had the bug to do, and I never really knew what's the right type of entrepreneurship. And like as far back as I can remember, never wanted to work a job. I always wanted to run my own gig, and so that's just so cool about what you guys have done. Now, in terms of the business now, like how many projects do you have active right now, like somewhere in the term of the rent to own?
Yeah, probably about we're just over 100 active projects right now that are currently in process, that that we're bringing on more and more, and exiting out as well too. So it's always hovering around that 100, 120 or so that are active, and we bring on some and close out some.
And I'm assuming you guys have like a broker that you work with on the back end that knows how to get the banks to love the down payment confirmation, because it's not conventional, right? Like you're saying, hey, here's a piece of paper showing that they've been giving me money for 3 or 4 years. I know I've talked to lenders that resist on that. They didn't like that. But of course, there are some out there that recognize this and understand it.
Yes, absolutely. And we've seen that in many cases where our clients have either just walked into their bank and said, hey, I've been in a rent home for the last 3 years. Can you help me qualify? And they get looked at like they have, 3 heads, or they get turned down from the bank rather quickly. But our team, our mortgage brokers that we work with, obviously know the lenders, know how to set this up properly to present this to the lenders. They're purchasing a home at the end of the day, right? We're crediting them for the amount that they've saved and that they've earned throughout the program, right? They've given that initial deposit, they've saved that additional on a monthly basis. So our mortgage team works hard, to make sure that, first of all, supporting them throughout the program to get them ready, but then presenting them to the right lenders that are good with the rent to home program, and getting them qualified so that they can be home ownership and get into the conventional financing.
Cool. Okay. So we've done a good recap on rent to own, which is good because I haven't talked about rent to own on here since you were on last. So
all right.
Yeah. So nothing's really changed. It's I think maybe the benefit of getting into one has probably changed in terms of people see what's happening in the market and they know how out of control the prices are right now. So it's an interesting way to lock something in before it gets too much further down the road.
Well, definitely. When we were talking 2.5 some odd years ago, and even earlier than that, when we first started this program, it took a lot more to explain it. People were much more resistant. But now, as it is tougher and tougher to crack the market and get into home ownership, more people are open to unconventional ways of financing so that they can, right? And we've had several people that are like, hey, can I buy a duplex? And can I, maybe rent out part of that? And we love that, because now it's even being creative, even beyond that, where you can supplement income, or looking at, house hacking was, something that was unheard of a few years ago. Now it's becoming more and more common, supplementing income, multiple people living together. As interest rates continue to climb, it is going to get tougher and tougher. So it's a lot more people are open to the idea than they were before. That's
right. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. So transitioning into, I remember, and this is, maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I think you have vacation rentals in Port Stanley.
Yeah, there's some beach cottages out there as well that I'm a part of a group. There's some cottages out there in the short-term rentals for sure.
You jogged my memory. We were just talking. I'm connecting things in my mind here. So vacation rentals, that's part of what you were doing back then. It's the nice thing because, you are the entrepreneur here. You're doing something very entrepreneurial that's real estate related, and then also the investor too. Tell me a bit more about you as the investor.
Yeah, as the investor, I continued to build up my portfolio with long-term holds, duplexes. I did the first duplex conversion, and had some great people helping me kind of going through the drawings and how to split all that up and do that properly. That was really cool. And those, it's interesting that it's not as involved as a rent to own. It's just kind of like, hey, collect the rent each month, make sure that things are done properly. But up to about now, I think it's nine or 10 doors. Yeah, 10 doors that are currently renting there, and looking at other opportunities as well too. In the U.S., I know you're in Florida. I think it was Cape Coral that used your property. I was just out in Orlando a couple of weeks ago. Have some good friends and colleagues out there that are close by Disney. So the Airbnb rentals and Disney was something that entertaining that idea. Costa Rica outside, and just looking at all different opportunities. It's like buses, right? That there's all kinds of opportunities that are coming by. But what to sink your teeth into. Again, I'm biased. I invest in our own projects as well. And I look at our rent to owns as well. But looking at the longer term of what to do of those longer term holds or duplexes, where again, where housing and the supply is short. So there's always going to be a need for people to live somewhere, whether that's owning or renting. So doing that in different ways that make the most sense, and being kind of hands off from the JAG property side, being involved and being part of those projects are great. But you kind of see it all from hands-off standpoint, looking to do a little bit more passive investing and finding other people to do the heavy lifting.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's nice to find others to do the heavy lifting, but I mean, I think you've already got this mindset where you build the team, right? So you might be very hands-on at first, and then you just keep building out your team so that you're less and less hands-on. You create systems, and then obviously teams, which you've got lots of experience at. So that's good. But are you still doing? I mean, are these 10 units all duplexes?
So duplexes and triplexes mostly.
Hamilton area?
All in and around the Hamilton area. One in Cambridge as well that we have partners on, but all in the Hamilton area. We've seen obviously the rents continue to climb and the demand, right? Like even I had one vacancy wasn't too long ago, and it was unbelievable the amount of applications that came in just for a rental property, where I thought, hey, hopefully did I put it too low? Maybe that's why I got all these applicants, right? And again, just the demand. There's no quick solution to this issue. And yes, interest rates going up and inflation and all that. However, there's this lack of supply where people need to live.
That's the interesting part, right? Like so many people will say, well, we're expecting property values to go down. And I don't disagree, but the supply issue isn't going anywhere unless people want to immigrate here, because we still have the 400,000 people coming to the country and 200,000 new housing starts a year. So how do we make up that difference? How do property values go down and, you continue immigrating those people? So I'm thinking out loud now, like what could happen? I guess some of those people could just go, all move in together and you have like 3 families live under one roof. But otherwise it feels like it's hard to see a reality where the property values stay down for a long time unless so many of these people just go homeless. And again, just thinking out loud, I don't know if you have any comments on this, but I try to envision what are the possibilities in which way real estate values would go down and stay down. What are your thoughts?
Well, the only way that I see that is they remove all the red tape and everybody can become a developer or builder. And I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. If anything, we've talked about the different government programs, but again, I'm of the thought, government has great ideas. Implementing them is a different thing, and actually making them come to fruition, doesn't necessarily correlate with the ideas that they have. But I think, like you said, multiple families living together. I know when my grandfather immigrated to Canada in the 60s, multiple families were living together, right? So that they could get established. But again, there wasn't a lack of supply at that point there. It was really, people were living together because they were just starting to get onto their feet. There are people that are immigrating here, that are coming here, that have, good financial wherewithal, and that they just don't have anywhere to go. So living together, but I don't really see how, there's going to be a steep cliff where all of a sudden the property values go in half. And the other part of it is, educated investors, that listen to your show or that we know, those property prices go down. Someone's going to grab those all up, right? If there's a sale, then investors, and I think obviously the number has increased. The latest numbers are something like 20 or 25% of properties were purchased by investors, right? It's not their primary home. So there has to be a balance where, people, it's a great asset class. People want to own that. So if you're not buying it from a standpoint of your primary residence, then investors will buy it. So there's always going to be, a pretty good level of demand.
Well, and then you've got people who aren't affected by the interest rate hikes. Like, I know there's a foreign buyer's tax, but we have new immigrants that are coming here with just tens of millions of dollars who can buy cash and it's not a problem. I mean, back in my brokering days, I used to have conversations with people like, well, we don't really need the mortgage. We could just buy a cash. But if you give us a really great deal, we want 2.2 instead of 2.3. And so that is a thing too. But and I don't think that, like, we can always talk about it. And I think that's helpful. You work your way through the possibilities and the possible outcomes, and that helps you make decisions going forward. Do I like investing in Canada right now? Not really, because because the cash flow numbers just aren't as appealing as they once were. But so that's why I know you're talking about looking at other markets, and same thing for me. I always say this a lot. Water goes to the lowest point. So if I can find a community where the housing prices make a lot more sense, why not invest there? Why not put my money there? Because other people are going to notice that market makes a lot more sense too. They're going to see, well, hey, my dollar goes further there. Like, so whether that's New Brunswick or Calgary or Edmonton, I guess would be a better example, or somewhere in Florida or somewhere else in the U.S. I think that that's just a logical process of logical reasoning. You're figuring out a place to put your money to work the best way.
Well, and that's a great example out east in Eastern Canada, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island. We've made some good partnerships out there where we have boots on the ground, or essentially a property manager out there that we're working with, and now are seriously looking at and taking more applications from Eastern Canada. Where again, they've increased their purchase prices as well, but their relative terms relatively, it still makes sense. And there seems to be like a mass exodus outside of Ontario, and I think it's probably like one of the most desirable areas in the Western world where we are in the GTA and surrounding areas. That again, it's the economic hub of Canada, Toronto mainly, and everybody wants to be within that point. Like, again, when you look at condos in New York, a condo in Toronto is still relatively inexpensive, right? So, it's a global city, and everywhere around us continue to go up. So you have to go where there is opportunity, and it does make sense. So it wouldn't be wise to look at other opportunities. Again, we've established the market here. We have great partners, and it still works in this area. Like has the criteria for the clients changed a little bit for sure. But that's changed for everyone, right? As interest rates go up, as purchase prices go up, and qualifications, and I just think it's a matter of time that incomes will rise. They'll never go at the same rate, but incomes will have to go up as well too. So.
They will. Yeah, we're going to see so much change. I keep going back to this, and I just don't think there's a great precedent for this time for, knowing the circumstances that created the inflation situation, and then of course the immigration component of it, and the just complete lack of supply, right? Like, there's been other crashes. I'm not saying this is a crash, but there's been crashes in the past where, they didn't necessarily have the supply issue, but we do. And, we'll see how it all shakes out. But I agree. If you can still find deals here, you can still find things that work here. And of course, for your rent to own program, I mean, people need to live here. If this is where their location is, then that's where it is. I was more saying, as an investor, I think it makes a ton of sense. Hey, it doesn't have to be in my backyard. I'm good with as long as I have the time to set up, like you said, boots on the ground in another market. It makes a ton of sense.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, so what's your strategy now then as an investor? Obviously, you've got the stuff in the Hamilton area. What are you excited about as an investor? You did mention Orlando, but is there anything you're looking at that you've crunched some numbers on recently?
Yeah, like again, that's the one most recently that I was looking at. To be honest, I'm looking at a personal property right now. So with a little guy, we're looking to expand, we're looking to grow. I'm still trying to rack my head around that I'm going to have to pay all of the payment on a mortgage, right? But again, that's actually that is going to be the next purchase that I make. It's a personal home that I can call a family home that will be a place to for my family to grow and continue to build. That's what I'm looking at personally today. But always looking at opportunities, whether that's Airbnbs, whether that's more duplexes and triplexes, and kind of consolidating that in the Hamilton area.
Sure.
But that's what excites me is again finding that personal home, but expanding out maybe another duplex or triplex as we continue to grow.
So if you were to look for a triplex, or do you have anything on your radar right now, or a duplex in the local area?
Well, nothing specific, but again, I think just a matter of in Hamilton, East Hamilton specifically, where there has to be, there's just so many single family homes that fit perfect for a duplex conversion. Where again, we're talking about a lack of supply, where one home becomes two. That that could simply be done in terms of converting that and building those neighborhoods, right?
So a lot of the ones in East Hamilton are more like those story and a half. There's a lot of smaller footprint, no driveway. If I'm thinking of the same area of East Hamilton that you are, or are you thinking further, like more like Stony Creek?
Yeah, kind of right on that border as you kind of continue down, yeah, towards Stony Creek. And again, like there are some areas, and I think, obviously parking is an issue, right? With those ones that without driveway, and where do we go? I think as that LRT comes through Hamilton, that's going to be less of an issue. I think less people will have a vehicle, or families that have multiple. We're going back where maybe households are just going to have one vehicle, right? If that, right? As transit continues to improve. Hamilton is, I think, far behind in terms of that, but now they have the LRT. We know it won't be built on time. It'll be delayed.
Yeah.
That's just an eventuality. But I think, again, just the proximity from Hamilton to Toronto as a global city, people that are going to commute from Hamilton to Toronto to go there, I think it's still a great bet.
Oh yeah, it's still a bedroom. I mean, Hamilton's just, it's just gone to a price point, which the rest of the GTA has too, right? It's all just gone up together. So definitely still serves as a bedroom to Toronto, and still has its own thing going on too. Has the municipal government changed at all in terms of their requirements? Because I think before it was like a 700 square foot minimum for a basement apartment. Is that still the minimum, or minor variances getting through where people can squeak it under that?
You know what? I'm not sure. I would just be guessing as well too. On the duplexes that we've done, they're well over the 700.
Yeah, they're well over it. So you're looking at stuff that's bigger than that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then you can pull higher rents. Like there's, most like 2 bedrooms in the basement units. There's that you can do. So you're going to pull some higher rents to make sure that you can take care of that mortgage payment, or the principal interest payments on those higher purchase prices, right?
So say you get one of those, like the classic 1,000 square foot, 1,100 square foot bungalow, Hamilton bungalow. What would you have to pay right now, or what would you be comfortable kind of paying for that kind of a product right now?
I'm guessing, and this is probably looking in the range, probably at least 800,000, I would think, right? 750 to 9 is probably in that range, depending on that.
Yeah.
And I know this is only, this is right at the beginning of the pandemic when we finished that last duplex, and it was about 100 or so of renos to get it converted. So again, just with everything increasing, I'm assuming that maybe not doubled, but you're looking maybe at 150,000 to convert that, to get that. Now, I think the city of Hamilton is going to be a little bit more inspired, let's say, to get permits through and to create that housing. But again, it's anybody's guess in terms of how quickly, right?
Yeah. So say you're in for 950, what do you figure you would rent? Because you have some pretty recent experience of what your stuff's renting for. So an up and a down together, what kind of rents would you pull now?
Yeah, I would say north of 2. I'm probably going to guess in the range. Like I know in the triplex, we have our 2 upper units that are at 2,200, and those are rented in the last year. So those might have slightly come up just a little bit from a year ago. So I'm going to guess like 23.
For an upper unit, I feel like you'd be even more than that for an upper unit.
Well,
like 25.
This is Well, this I'm quoting I'm quoting like a triplex, right? Where it's
okay,
I'm being conservative. I always like to use conservative.
Okay, so if you're 2,500, maybe let's say we can adjust that, but 2,500 in the upper, and then maybe like 1,800 to 2,000 on the lower.
Yeah, I would say 2 is kind of like that over under for the lower unit these days as well. So yeah.
Okay, so 2,000. Yeah, I've been hearing that too. So you're 4,500, and then would the tenant be paying utilities split 60-40 in that arrangement?
Yeah, absolutely. Tenants are paying the utilities.
Okay, so in that type of thing, like what would a typical tax bill on that type of house be? Like a $5,000 a year kind of thing?
Yeah, that's probably a good range. Yeah, just around 5.
And insurance on something like that be $2,000.
Yeah, maybe about, I don't know, $1.25 a month or so on that, range that, or even, I think you're.
So that'd be about 1,500. Yeah, the insurance is such a variable because there's so many different ways you can cover things, and everybody does it sort of their own comfort. But okay, so I'm just gonna copy our numbers here. I figure we should. It's been a while since I've really run numbers on deals. I don't want to get out of the habit of that too much. The spreadsheet still work, right? Just the numbers change. Yeah, exactly. So maintenance, I got a 5% in there, just kind of a placeholder. Utilities, so you wouldn't really have anything. Basically, be a 0. All right. Yeah. And then management, would you self-manage or kind of have your internal team manage?
Yeah, especially in the Hamilton area, like I'm good with self-managing. I have, some good colleagues, good friends that, take care of snow removal and lawn care, those types of things.
So you don't have a fee or an expense for lawn care?
I would include that, but it's only for a few months of the year, right? So
what do you figure, like snow removal, lawn care all together? What's your total expense?
I would probably maybe put it five a month or something like that, just to kind of blend that throughout the year.
Like 500 for the year?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. 500. Yeah. For lawn care, for snow removal, if you're looking at the,
Yeah, the package together. Yeah, I was about to say 500 a month. You're paying the wrong landscaper, unless you got like a 5-acre duplex. Okay, so miscellaneous. I'll just throw $500 in there just in case there's something. So you keep your expenses pretty tight on those, and you would be in for about, in that case, 950. I mean, what's the finished duplex going for these days? I've heard people say 1.1 million.
Yeah, I think there's been up on the Hamilton Mountain. I've seen north of $1 million. But let's call it. Yeah, I could go with that.
Call it $1 million, or sure. Would you say even more? So you'd have a bit of money into it if it was at $1 million. You'd be in for 950, getting it appraised at $1 million. So your net investment would be around 100 grand, assuming you could. Actually, sorry, I have the wrong number in here. Are you still getting 80%, or you'd be getting 75% loan to value?
At this point, yeah, probably 80% loan to value.
Yeah. So you're still going institutional, like regular residential lenders?
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess now interest rates are up a bit, probably more like a 3.5% if you were to do something. So, I mean, in that scenario, based on the expenses I ran, and this is a good exercise. So 4,500 grand, take off all the expenses we just went through, and $1 million value with a refi. So you're in for 100, making about $23 a month. Now we have padded the numbers. We put a 5% maintenance in there, which, depending on the state of the property, you might not have. And I did put 500 miscellaneous, and what else we had? I had a $500 in there for management, just for any expenses you might have. So there's a little bit of a pad in there, but again, still a break even. It's not losing money, and that's something that's going to go up in value. Rents are going to go up over time. You'd expect, right?
Yeah.
So still works. It's just not the sexy 500 to 1,000 cash flow that people used to be used to.
Yeah, and you know what? I'd love to get your thoughts on like if you the short-term rental side of things, right? Like again, there's a little bit more intense management from that side of things, right?
Yeah.
Like turning over and prepping and repairs and all that kind of stuff. And again, if you're looking in certain areas of the city, how many nights of the month is it going to be vacant?
Right. I keep hearing people are pleasantly surprised about this, especially if you're like near like a hospital or something. If you get workers that are coming into town that need to be there for a month or something, like as far as I'm concerned, if I had the number that you had in Hamilton, I would just throw one out there as an experiment. A shout out to John. I just want to get his last name here. I was speaking with him the other day, Airbnb analytics, and kind of really crunched some numbers for me. And I opened my eyes about a few things. John Bianchi. I'm probably saying that horribly wrong. I don't know if you've heard his name before.
Okay, yeah.
He's got a YouTube channel, and he goes through kind of air analytics and kind of how you can use AirDNA. And he was kind enough to take some time and go over what I'm doing in Cape Coral with me and kind of explain what I would be looking at there. So I thought that was super helpful. But I mean, it's all an experiment as far as I'm concerned, right? Because just because the analytics or the data that somebody else does, is one way, doesn't mean you couldn't blow people away with better pictures, better amenities, a nicer, more comfortable looking place. And do much better than the average. So that's always been my thought. That's always been my angle as an investor, is to be better than average, like make my stuff stand out and then hopefully perform much better. And so far it's actually worked out.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you're going out there and looking to buy a great deal, those don't exist. You have to go and make that. You have to go and build
making the deal.
Making the deal work. And again, like in one of the units or one of the properties that we have, like, we rent out the garage for $200 a month, right? So finding other revenue generators that you can find in those properties, right? So, and again, the multi-unit buildings as well too, like, again, looking to crack that as well. But again, I have my comfort zone of if putting my money into a rent-to-own property, again, that's always been my forte, my comfort level, where I have that comfort with that client. I know that it's going to be taken care of, and I can continue to turn that over and reinvest that in other opportunities, right? So with a BRRRR, right, you have to qualify for that higher for that higher amount at the end. When you're selling a property, right, now you have that income to go and to go and reuse that or recycle that into another project as well.
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I was going to ask you, for you, do you care if it cash flows, right? Obviously you have your active business. Do you need your properties to be big cash flow winners, or are you just looking for stuff that services itself?
Well, that's rule number one, right? It needs to at least cover itself in a little bit of cash flow in worst case scenarios. I'm not going to buy at a negative cash flow.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be servicing it. Mm-hmm.
That's right. I'm not going to go into my pocket dip out. I want it to at least cover itself or make some cash flow. However, that's, it'd be different strategies for different reasons, right? For long-term holds that are going to be holding on to 10, 20, 30 years, I think that's the question, right? Ask any investor, when they bought 5 years ago or 10 years ago, if they regret it. And, I think as people have seen 20, 25 and 30% increases in people that are expecting that, that's not necessarily the case. But again, over the long term, you're always going to be ahead.
Yeah, and I've always felt the same. Don't bank on the appreciation. Even with what we've seen, you don't know what's going to happen in the future, right? I mean, we can predict. There's lots of ways you can predict, but all it takes is one political decision to tank what you thought was a for sure thing. So, because we can't control things outside of ourselves, sometimes we have to just admit what we don't know and structure ourselves accordingly. So, I appreciate that you brought that up. Okay, Alfonso, we've covered a good deal of stuff. Probably best that we wrap it up at that. So, where would people reach you if they wanted to connect with you, follow you and your journey?
Yeah, definitely get in touch with me at our website, jagproperties.com, JAAG properties.com, or you can send email to Alfonso at jagproperties.com. And happy to connect with all the different investors, whether you're on your journey, you're a veteran, you're just starting out. I'd love to connect, hear the different stories and be in touch. And maybe there are good opportunities that I'm not thinking about and getting outside of my comfort zone in that box, but love to connect and really appreciate the opportunity of being on here today again, Andrew. And you do a great job, putting out so much value in education for the investors out there to take a look at it. And really appreciate you and what you do for everyone out there.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And you do as well. So, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, you have the podcast. Could you share your podcast name and where people find it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super, this is actually going to be the first time I'm announcing this, but there's the Right Club podcast that we've been doing for years as well, too, along with the Right Club. And we are now starting a Rent to Home podcast as well, too. So for those looking to learn a little bit more about our strategy. So definitely the Right Club podcast and Jag Properties Rent to Home podcast.
Okay. And these are just on any of the podcast platforms?
Any of the podcast listeners that all your favorite that are out there.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thanks, Alfonso. It's great catching up with you. It's been a long time. So it's good to see your face again and have a conversation.
Yeah, likewise, Andrew. Thanks so much.
Okay, talk soon. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Please make sure to share this episode far and wide. Help it help more people. I really appreciate you tuning in. I'll see you on the next one.